Okay, welcome back to another video. So we're going to carry on with our discussion about methods, but today we're going to learn about a different kind of method. They're called procedure methods. There are only two types of methods, so they're called function methods and procedure methods. So a procedure method is simply just a type of method that does not return a value. So if you look back to our function methods, I'll go back to function methods 2. So here's my main method, and let's get rid of this extra white space here. And then down below we've got our first method called sum. So this is outside of the main method. See, it's after the main method, but it's still inside the class. And you'll see that the return type is an int. So this method is going to take in an int. So that's the input. It's taking in a number. And then it's going to return an int back to where it was called. So that is the idea of a function method. I think I drew a little picture here. Yeah, okay, so here's an example of a function that takes in two parameters and then it returns the smaller of x and y. So a function kind of looks like this. You can have any number of inputs. You could have 2, you could have 20 inputs. You could even have 0 or 1 inputs into this. But a function will always spit out a value. It will always return a value. However, procedure methods will never return anything. So the picture looks like this. So it can take any number of inputs, but nothing will be returned. Now, this is kind of mysterious. What does a procedure method do if it doesn't return anything? Well, let's go back to our procedure methods note, which I have right here. So usually a procedure method, it just kind of has a bunch of print line statements in it. So you're printing a certain message. Maybe you're displaying a menu. Perhaps you're making an ATM banking machine, and you have that home menu that always prints, press 1 for withdraw, press 2 for deposit, and so on. So that message you might want to store as a procedure so that you can call upon it many times. So after the user has deposited something, you could display the home menu once again. So you could keep running that code, but you only have to type it once. Okay, so I'm starting simple. I just have a 3-line message here. And so up in my main method, how do I call this procedure? How do I make it work? Like right now, if I compile this, nothing will happen if I run it. And the reason why nothing is happening is because my main method is empty. And whenever you run a program, you're really just running the main method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call upon this method, and you do that by just saying the name of the method, followed by a list of the input parameters. Now, this does not have any input parameters, so we don't have to pass any down. Okay? So if this list is blank, then this has to be blank as well. Now, to call a procedure method, you just do this. You don't have to, if I go back to function methods, you'll notice that in the main method, we always had to print this function call. So sum for, I had to print it because I'm getting a value back. This method is giving me back a returned value, and so I need to do something with it. So in this case, I'm printing it. But for procedure methods, you're not getting anything back. So we can just say the name of the method followed by the list of parameters. Now, when I run this, okay, when I run the main method, the only thing I'm doing is I'm calling the message command, the message method. So that's going to jump out, and it's going to call this method, and it's going to run these 3 lines of code, and then we go back up to the main method. So let's have a look. Okay, so now I'm running my message method, and you might be thinking at this point, well, why is this even needed? Why don't we just put all of this code, why don't we just put all of this in the main method? Like, why do I even need to jump out and call this method? Well, the beauty is that you can call it over and over again. So if I felt the need to, I could just say message one more time, and then it'll call upon that method twice. Okay, so it's all about code reuse. So something that you think you're going to be doing over and over again in your program, you should make a method for that, and then you can call upon it with just one line of code. All right. You may be thinking one more thing. You might be thinking, well, why don't why don't I just put all this code in the main method and then just put it in a loop if you want to run it over and over again? That's what you might be thinking. But what's cool about a method is you can do other things in between. So I'm just going to print just a dumb string here, ABC, and then you can put another thing in between. So you could put anything in between these method calls. So in other words, you don't have to do this simultaneously over and over again. You can call upon it whenever you want. All right. So you might have 100 lines of code in between, and then you can call the message method again. So that is the benefit to writing a method. Now, one thing you should know is that the return type for procedure methods is void. So if I flip back to function methods, you'll see that the return type can be anything. It could be int or both of these return an int, but function methods could also return a double or a string or a boolean. They could return anything. But since procedure methods don't return anything, we just put the word void all the time. Okay, so you that might be familiar. We've seen that the main method is actually a void method. So the main method that we've been using for the whole year is a procedure method itself. Okay. Oops. So I'm going to make another procedure method, and it's void, so it doesn't return anything. And I'm going to call this let's say greeting, and this time I'm going to have an input parameter, just one, an int. Now you can have multiple, like you can actually, you know what, let's add a second one. I'm going to have a string called str and an int called n. So this method is going to have two input parameters, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a loop where I goes from 1 to n. So I is going to start at 1 and it's going to go all the way up to n. Okay, so let's just pretend n was 5. Then this loop is going to run 5 times. And what I'm going to do is print hello. Actually, no, sorry, not hello. I'm going to print str. I forgot I added a string parameter. So whatever this string is, okay, whatever that is storing, I'm going to print that over and over again n times. And so you'll notice this method is not returning anything. There's no calculated value that needs to be returned. I'm simply just doing something. I'm just printing something over and over again. So now let's test this method out. So I'm going to go up to my main method, and I'm going to instead of message, I'm going to say greeting. And then I have to follow the parameter requirements. So I have to put in a string, and then I have to put in int. So I'm going to say something like hello, comma, 6. Okay. So when I run my program, when I run this, the main method is always run first. So we always run the main method. And then right away, I'm calling the greeting procedure, and I'm passing hello. That gets thrown down into str, and 6 gets passed into n. And then I'm going to run this loop, and I'm going to print str, which is hello. So I'm going to print hello over and over again. Let's have a look. So if I run it, you'll see hello is printed 6 times. Okay, I can change this. I can say, hello, how are you today? Okay, and I can put 15. Okay, so just with that simple change, that's going to call the greeting procedure. And this time, this is the string that will get plugged into str. And this time, 15 will get plugged into n. So I'm going to run the loop 15 times, and I'm going to print my string over and over again. Okay. Then if you want, you can even do another greeting right after. So you can say, nice to see you. and then I have to put a number, so maybe I'll just put 3. Okay. So you'll see that it calls my first greeting, and then it calls my second greeting call. And then you can go and call your other method, message. Okay, so then it's going to call this little program here after it does all of that stuff. Semicolon. Okay, so in the end you get something like this. Okay, so you'll see right at the very end it's calling my original procedure method called message. Now, so this doesn't really make sense for any real piece of software out there, but it hopefully gives you an understanding of what a procedure method is, and that you can call the method quite easily just by saying the name of the method, and then you have to put the required parameters in. And then you can call this method multiple times, anytime you want to. Okay, so we are going to practice this in the next lesson, and we'll go from there. Okay, thanks for watching.